Hello and welcome to a genteel black hole, the home of my bookish rambles. My name's Ali, and this is everything I read in December. December was kind of a weird month for me. Not just because it was Christmas and that's always kind of disruptive and weird and strange, but I ended up reading actually more books than I usually read. I finished 9 books in total over the course of December. Some of those I had started the previous month, but I think also the boost in numbers can be accounted for by the relatively short length of quite a lot of the books, and the fact that I have recently started getting back to reading at bedtime as well as in the morning. So I now tend to have 2 books on the go that I'm working through, steadily and regularly. So yeah, I've got a lot to get through in this video, so let's just get right on with it, shall we? My first read of December was a reread of The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents by Terry Pratchett. This is a Discworld book, but it's something of an outlier in that it's a Discworld book aimed at younger readers. Terry Pratchett did write some children's books in his pre-Discworld days, and kind of during his Discworld days as well. But this was the first one that was actually part of the Discworld series. But, I mean, it pretty much stands alone, both within Discworld and kind of, just in general. So it's a very fun kind of, not exactly a retelling, but a pastiche or parody or homage to the tale of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. The Amazing Maurice of the title is a cat who, for magic reasons, is able to talk, as are his educated rodents. They are basically running a scam which takes the form of the kind of Pied Piper thing. They are also in on it with a human called Keith, who is the Piper. So they stage infestations in small villages, and then Keith comes in and rids them of the rats with his pipe, and then they all go merrily on their way and split the money between them. But when they end up in one particular town called Bad Blintz, there are more sinister things afoot, and I won't spoil any more from here, but yeah, I really like this book. Rereading it, I didn't love it as much as when I first read it. I think when I first read it, I was so taken by surprise that I felt a lot more enthusiasm for it. This time around, I still really like it, though. So, yeah, I think if you have kids and they don't mind a little bit of scariness, because, not all of the rodents make it out alive. And there's some pretty dark stuff in here. But, it is suitable for children, and yeah, if your kids wouldn't be too traumatized by some rat traps and poison, then I would definitely recommend this. It's a great read. It's very funny, unexpectedly touching in places. Yeah, I think it's great. So definitely recommend. My next read of December was a new one for me, and that was Annihilation by Jeff VanderMeer. This is a kind of sci-fi horror, I suppose. I'm not really sure how to describe it. And it's the first in a series, the Southern Reach. Used to be a trilogy, now is a quartet, I think. But yeah, this was my first time reading Jeff VanderMeer. I think this was also turned into a film back in, I want to say 2019. The book came out 2014. But I haven't seen the film, so I was going in pretty blind. All I really knew was that it's about a team who are sent into a strange place called Area X, where inexplicable things are happening. So I was kind of expecting something similar to the Strugatsky brothers' Roadside Picnic, or Stalker, the film that was made based on that. And although there are some similarities, it's not really much like that, to be honest. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It's a very creepy and unsettling atmospheric read. There's some very memorably weird imagery in there. And I really enjoy the fact that it never really gives too much away about what's going on. So it doesn't kind of spoil the creepy atmosphere by explaining it all away in the end. And from what I gather, even in later books, it still doesn't really give that much away. So yeah, I definitely really enjoyed this, and I'm interested in trying at least the next book in the series, probably the whole series. But yeah, I'm not necessarily racing towards it, but definitely interested. So yeah, another hit for December. My next read was a bedtime read, so it was an ebook, and it was the 8th Moomin book by Tove Jansson, Moominpappa at Sea. I got into Moomins kind of early on last year and ended up reading a lot of Moomins over the year. I skipped the very first book, so this is the 8th book, but it was my 7th, and I was looking forward to reading this one particularly because I was aware that it was part of a Reading the Globe YA BookTube read-along that I heard about on Jack from Spread Book Joy's channel. And yeah, this was just an absolute delight, as every Moomins book has been for me so far. So this one is about Moominpappa, the patriarch of the Moomin family, is kind of feeling restless and irritable, and he feels like life is too easy and comfortable, and his family don't really need him. And so he decides to uproot everyone and move the whole family to an isolated island where there is a lighthouse, and try and make a new life for the family, somewhere more exciting, where he will be more useful for them, I suppose. Which, I would question the wisdom of that, Moominpappa, but anyway, it made for a wonderful story. It's definitely the most melancholy of the Moomins books that I've read so far. And I mean, there's always a thread of melancholy through them, but this one even more so. But, in a wonderful way. I think, my inner child is a melancholy child as well. So it definitely worked for me. Again, it's a very atmospheric book. And although, it's completely different to Annihilation, I mean, even bringing these two up in the same breath is kind of weird. But both do feature prominent lighthouses and weird spooky noises heard at night. So I was reading these around the same time, and it kind of spooky how they were sort of speaking to each other like that, despite being such drastically different books. But yeah, anyway, I absolutely loved Moominpappa at Sea. It was one of my favourite reads of December, one of my favourite reads of the year, and one of my favourite Moomins books. So, yeah, really glad I read it. And I think, with all these Moomins books, it doesn't really matter which order you pick them up. So, whether or not you've read Moomins before, you could definitely pick up Moominpappa at Sea if that's something that sounds good to you. Next up is another bedtime ebook, but a very different one. It's Agnes Grey by Anne Brontë. This was my first experience of Anne Brontë. I have read Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre before, and in some ways, this book has some similarities with Jane Eyre because it is about a young woman from an impoverished background who gets a job as a governess, and then there's a romance. But it's not really like Jane Eyre at all, other than those kind of surface similarities. My kind of preconception of the Brontë sisters is I was kind of expecting this to be another sort of tempestuous romance like Jane Eyre, or like my impression of Wuthering Heights, which I've not actually read yet. But yeah, this is a much gentler and lighter book. It's also much shorter than Jane Eyre. But yeah, the love interest for Agnes is not a kind of Lord Byron type. In fact, he's a very kind of gentle and kind-hearted curate, and the romance aspect is kind of about them both being sort of too timid to make the first move and make it kind of obvious to each other that they're definitely interested in each other. So that was kind of sweet, but I also I just didn't really care that much, to be honest. I liked Anne Bronte's writing style. I thought there's some nice kind of wry humour in there, which I wasn't expecting. I mean, Agnes, as the narrator, often kind of comments that she doesn't want to try the reader's patience, so she'll kind of skip ahead in the story and not bore you with the details. So, that was kind of... those bits sort of made me smile. But I found Agnes and Mr. Weston, the curate, both kind of bland. They're sort of goody two-shoes, and if they were real people, then I would be perfectly happy for them having found each other, but I wasn't really that interested in reading about it happening. So I'm not going to write off Anne Brontë, because I've heard good things about The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which maybe that's a more exciting book. So I'm not rushing to find out, but I have to say I wasn't really that interested in Agnes Grey. Nicely written, but just not that thrilling for me. Next up, we have a short story collection. It's The Compass Rose by Ursula K. Le Guin. This book actually contains 2 short story collections. I already read The Wind's 12 Quarters in a previous month and have spoken about that. But now I've finished both collections in this book. I really enjoyed The Compass Rose as well. I think I preferred The Wind's 12 Quarters. I think a couple of the things that I really loved about The Wind's 12 Quarters are absent from The Compass Rose. For one thing, the stories are not presented in chronological order, so you don't really get a kind of overview of Le Guin's progression as a writer. But I guess by that time, she was kind of, I suppose, fully formed, if you want to call it that, as a writer. So maybe that's kind of less important than it was in The Wind's 12 Quarters. But also, The Wind's 12 Quarters included introductions that Le Guin wrote for each story, which she didn't do for The Compass Rose. And I really missed those introductions because I found them really interesting and a valuable insight into her creative process. So I kind of wished that was here too. Having said that, there are still some just absolutely fantastic stories in here. Some sci-fi, some sort of fantasy-ish, some more kind of realistic. And yeah, there are just, as with any Le Guin book that I've ever read, there was something in here that kind of, got right to the heart of things for me. My favourite stories in here include The Author of the Acacia Seeds, which is presented as a kind of as excerpts from a scientific journal about the writings of animals, the languages of animals, and possibly plants. I also really liked Two Delays on the Northern Line, which is one of the more realistic stories, and it's about grief and bereavement. It's 2 characters from different generations of the same family who both experience a bereavement, different bereavements. But yeah, loved that. The Diary of the Rose, which is a very dark kind of dystopian sci-fi story about totalitarianism and dissidents. It's about a psychiatrist who is asked to treat a patient who doesn't need treatment. He's not sick. He's a dissident. So that was a really disturbing but brilliant read. I really liked Intracom, which is presented as dialogue between members of a spaceship crew as they find that there is an alien stowaway on board, and it gradually becomes clear that the whole thing is a metaphor for something else, which I won't spoil for you because it's worth just reading it and figuring it out for yourself. But I really enjoyed that. And I also really liked a story called Gwilyn's Harp, which is about a musician who loses her skill as she gets older and has to kind of learn who she is outside of being a musician. And given that that I haven't played guitar for a few years now because of health reasons, that really kind of spoke to me on a level that I was not expecting. So yeah, there are some fantastic stories in here, and as ever, I just continue to get a lot out of Ursula K. Le Guin. So yeah, I'm really excited about starting the Hainish cycle read along with Gareth from Book Songs and Other Magic, and a whole host of other booktubers who are in the group chat. That will be my first group reading experience. So yeah, I'm really glad that will be with Ursula K. Le Guin. Next up, it's another bedtime ebook, and it's another children's book. This time it's Kiki's Delivery Service by Eiko Kadono. This, I was familiar with the film adaptation directed by Miyazaki. And that's one of my favourite Miyazaki films, one of my favourite animated films just in general. And for some reason I didn't know it was based on a book. So when I saw that it was, I was interested in checking it out. And yeah, it's a really sweet and charming read. I really like Eiko Kadono's authorial voice, as it's translated, at least. The story is about a young witch called Kiki, and she's about to come of age as a witch, and therefore, as tradition dictates, she has to leave home and set up on her own. And because the only magic she can actually do is fly on her broomstick, she starts a delivery service. And if you're familiar with the Miyazaki film, that all sounds pretty much as it is in the film. However, the film, it turns out, diverges quite significantly from the book after the first couple of chapters. So after like Kiki's first proper delivery, everything else was pretty much new to me. It's quite episodic. Each chapter is a different delivery, and it's about, you know, Kiki trying to solve the problems that she's faced with, and she gradually kind of makes new friends in her new home. And yeah, it's just really lovely and charming. I must admit, I prefer Miyazaki's film. One of my favorite elements of the film is the whole plot about Kiki kind of losing her magic and having to sort of relearn from the beginning, and how that is kind of a metaphor for creativity in general, and how when we're children, it's so much easier to be creative because you don't have that kind of self-critical voice telling you to stop, that you're not good enough, and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I kind of wished that had been part of this book as well, but judging the book on its own merits and not just in comparison with the film, then I would say it's really lovely and charming, very light, very low on peril. It's a very sweet, cute book. So a great bedtime read. Unfortunately, it seems like there's actually a whole series of Kiki books, and this is the only one that's been translated into English. So yeah, I don't really feel like learning Japanese just to read these. So even though it is part of a series, I'm going to have to leave it there for now. Next up is another reread for me, and it's a play, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, by Tom Stoppard, who unfortunately is also dead now. That's why I wanted to reread this. I've had it on my pile for a while. So when Tom Stoppard passed away last year, it kind of pushed this up to the top of the pile. This is the only Tom Stoppard play that I'm familiar with so far, but rereading this was just fantastic. It's an incredible play, so I definitely want to explore more of his work in the future. Anyway, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is set kind of in the gaps in Hamlet. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are minor characters in Shakespeare's Hamlet, and this play kind of asks, what are they doing whenever they're not on stage in Hamlet? They're fictional characters, and it's kind of what happens in the void where fictional characters go when they're not needed for the story they're in. It's a really strange and disorienting experience to read. I've also seen a production of it, a live streamed theatre production starring Daniel Radcliffe as Rosencrantz, which I read this once first, then I saw that production, which really helped me kind of grasp it better and sort of understand what I was reading. So then rereading it more recently, brought home to me how fascinating this play is. I really, really love this. This is one of my reads of the year, one of my reading experiences of the year. This absolutely clicked with me this time. It's very funny in places. It's also very dark and existential. asks questions about death and the meaning of death and life, and it's also about how theatre can't truly depict death, like someone collapsing on stage and playing dead doesn't get to the heart of what death actually is. So yeah, there's a lot of really stimulating ideas in here. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, definitely want to read some more Tom Stoppard. Next up, it's another bedtime children's book, and it's The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. This was put on my radar after I saw Nicole from Noteworthy Fiction talking about it. This was one of her childhood favourites, and the way she described it sounded right up my street. I'm surprised I didn't read this as a child. I think it would have been just perfect for child me. Adult me still really enjoyed it though. It's about a bored kid called Milo who, whatever he's doing, he's just waiting to do the next thing. When he's at school, he's just waiting to go home. When he's at home, he's just waiting to go to school again. He's not really interested in much of anything until he receives a mysterious gift, a magical turnpike toll booth, which transports him to a bizarre world full of eccentric characters and lots of puns. I'm a massive sucker for puns, as you may have noticed from watching literally any of my videos. So yeah, that gave me a kick immediately. The vibe to me is similar to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, in that it's about a kid who's transported to a strange and magical land that's kind of surreal and full of jokes and puns. However, this does have a much more kind of on-the-nose moral to the story. It's about Milo learning the joys of learning. Probably could have worded that better, but never mind. Yeah, I had a blast with this as well, so I'm really glad that Nicole recommended it. Yeah, there's some proper, like, top grade, like, groan-worthy puns in here. I'm thinking particularly of the car that only drives when you're silent, because it goes without saying. And finally, we've made it. It's my last book of December, my last book of 2025. It's another reread, and it's another Terry Pratchett book. It's Night Watch. This is the 29th Discworld book, and also the 6th in the Ankh-Morpork City Watch series. So it stars Sam Vimes, who is now the Duke of Ankh-Morpork, as well as the commander of the City Watch. He's on the trail of a vicious and unrepentant killer called Carcer, when a storm near the library of the unseen university, the magic university, transports them both back in time. So Vimes and Carcer are stuck 30 years or so in the past, and their arrival has kind of changed events. And so the man that Vimes once knew as his mentor is now dead before his time, and Vimes himself has to take on the man's place and mentor his younger self, at least long enough for the history monks to straighten out the timeline and send him back to the future. This is brilliant, in a word. It's one of Pratchett's most dramatic books, I think. There's still plenty of humour in there. I was just saying how much I love puns, and this book is full of them. But it's also, I think, one of Pratchett's angriest books. I think this and Small Gods show his kind of, show the depth of his anger towards inhumanity. There's stuff in here about police brutality, about torture, and civil unrest and social inequality, but it's all wrapped up in a fun fantasy time travel romp with loads of puns and dirty jokes. And I mean, some of the points he makes are using puns and dirty jokes. If it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough for Pratchett. So yeah, I would say this is kind of, I think this contains all of Pratchett's strengths really condensed into one book. Having said that, it's maybe not my favourite Pratchett still. This has a big reputation among Discworld fans as like the best Discworld book, and it's the first Pratchett book to be reprinted as a Penguin Modern Classic, which is a big kind of vote of confidence from the kind of publishing establishment. So it's a pretty significant Discworld book, and it definitely deserves its all of its praise. I think personally there are other Discworld books that appeal more to me very specifically. But having said that, this is just a fantastic read from start to finish. It's full of wit and righteous anger. And yeah, if you're looking for an introduction to Pratchett and you're not really drawn to outright comedy, then this, as one of the more thrilling and dramatic entries in the Discworld series, might be a good way in. But yeah, I think this book is absolutely fantastic, and I'm really glad that I read it, and really glad that I finished my year with it. So those were the 9 books that I finished in December 2025. And now that I've got through all of that, if you're still here, then I also have a couple of other things I'd like to chat about. Firstly, it's my film highlight for the month, and that was Good Morning. This is another Japanese film, in fact, another Ozu film. It's from 1959, and very much contrasting with Tokyo Story, which I spoke about a couple of months ago. This is a comedy, It's a comedy about two young brothers who go on a sort of silence strike when their parents refuse to buy them a TV. Meanwhile, the adults in the neighborhood are all busy making gossip and idle small talk, and it's kind of all about how small talk actually kind of keeps the world turning, as it were. It's just utterly delightful. I can't say enough good things about it, really. It's I love the unexpectedly scatological humor in places. I was warned by a friend that this is an Ozu film with fart jokes in it, and it really followed through. But the look of it, the music, the kind of the tone of it, if anything, kind of reminded me of one of my favourite French films, Mon Oncle, by Jacques Tati. But this is a much more talky film and less slapsticky. And yeah, is very different from Tokyo Story. So if you want to try Ozu, but you're not up for a crying jag, then Good Morning is a good time. And finally, one music highlight. I've been going back through all of my Ivor Cutler albums recently, and I'd like to just shout out the album Ludo. This was his second album from 1967, and it was produced, interestingly enough, by George Martin, who is best remembered as the producer of most of the Beatles albums. And in fact, Ivor Cutler's face may be familiar to Beatles fans as he played Buster Bloodvessel in the Magical Mystery Tour film. How to describe Ivor Cutler's albums? They're kind of uncategorizable. Ivor Cutler is a genre unto himself. These albums are eccentric mixes of songs, stories, and poems by a very eccentric Scottish weirdo, and I love them dearly. I think Ludo is also possibly the only album that doubles up as a board game. But yeah, I loved revisiting this album. It put a big smile on my face, which, I've talked about the kind of, my rough time I've been having with my mental health recently. So anything that can put that big and genuine a smile on my face is worth celebrating. My favourite tracks on the album include I'm Going in a Field, Darling, Will You Marry Me Twice, I Had a Little Boat, and a song that I think kind of, by strange coincidence, was sort of in conversation with the film I was just talking about, is called Good Morning, How Are You, Shut Up. Another music highlight for me, though, was the new single by Shudder to Think, who haven't released anything new, I think, since the late 90s, not including like live albums when they reformed about more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But yeah, first new Shudder to Think stuff. I'm a huge fan of Shudder to Think, and Their new single, Thirst Walk, is, yeah, it's great shudder to thinky stuff. So, yeah, definitely recommend that. I also really enjoyed revisiting some old favourite albums by the jazz trio The Bad Plus, and also some more avant-garde jazz, Out to Lunch by Eric Dolphy. So I made it through that mammoth recording session, and if you have also made it through the mammoth video, then thanks very much for sticking around. I'm glad you made it to the end. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you have any thoughts about any of the books that I talked about, or if you'd like to recommend anything that that might be up my street. One more thing before I go. I did make an individual video about this, but just in case you missed it, I've also started a blog, the Genteel Black Hole blog, as a sort of supplement to this channel. It's a lot less work to type up a blog post and press post than it is to make a video. So I've started that blog as a way to kind of keep up my online presence a bit more regularly, in a sort of low effort way. So if you're interested in kind of very short book and film reviews, and whatever else I might decide to post there on days when I don't have the time or energy to make videos, yeah, have a look over there if you like. Anyway, that's about it from me today. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I will see you when I see you.